We were commissioned by our client to create a coffee table that would protect and display their artwork. However, this artwork was so expensive that no insurance company would insure it for them to ship it to us. So here's our process of creating that table and hoping that it fits.
Okay, so now we can cut your long pieces that long. Exactly, whatever those are.
Yeah, so I'll keep these and I'll cut 2 other ones for the inside.
Yes, for the inside piece, so then, yeah.
Or I can just cut the big ones first and then use these again.
No, we should have enough to cut some more strips here.
Yeah, we should have fun.
Yeah, well.
The idea for this table came completely from our client. They had this vision to have a solid resin table with a clear window in the middle that they could use to display their artwork. So as opposed to hanging it on the wall, this would give them a different way to show it off to all the guests in their home. Now, we will put our rendering up on the screen right now to show you our vision for this piece that we rendered for the client and we got approval on. Since this is solid resin, we had to go through some different construction techniques than we typically would with a piece that involved wood. Now, you guys obviously know us for resin, and some people joke that we should be the Black Forest Resin Company, but we almost never make pieces that are 100% resin. So to pull this off without having any seams, we essentially constructed these large molds out of HDPE that were the full height of the coffee table leg, and we would just pour the thin open void from the top to give us that 2-inch thickness but the 18-inch height and a seamless transition all the way around this oval. So in order to have the pieces not bow out and deform during that pour, we had to create this grid or this frame going all the way around the outside using thicker pieces of HDPE. And so we have vertical components for that, we have horizontal components, and once all of these are put together, we can go ahead and line that with one sheet of 1/4-inch HDPE. We're also going to have to construct an intersection for this mold that will determine the thickness of the finished base.
And you get your silicone all around, and me and Letchik can do this. You can get a clamp over there, and the idea is not to squish silicone everywhere. Usually just dust it off. So you just gotta lay a nice bead all the way around, and then why don't we start with your one, lay it here, clamp it there before we even bend it around.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay? All right, Letchik.
With the mold construction we've done here, we're technically kind of breaking the rules when it comes to the thickness of resin that you can pour. Since we're not pouring this the flat way, our pour is going to be 18 inches thick. And what you need to consider when you're doing a large volume of pour is the surface area to volume ratio. So we have a very large volume of resin that we're pouring here, but a very small surface area to dissipate the heat that's generated from this pour. So it was a little nerve-wracking, I will say, and a bit of a risk to do something like this. We're hoping that we should be able to pull this off without any issues of overheating.
Yeah, it's going to be a kind of a weird one.
We're pouring a table base for a customer who wants a solid epoxy coffee table. So we're essentially making like an oval of solid resin. There's no way to properly cool it all the way up the side, so our plan is to put as many frozen water bottles as we can freeze in the middle to try to keep it cool, basically. It's water cooled, so it's gonna cool through the bottom, and then we're gonna add water bottles to help.
Ice keep cool. What we could always do is just actually put them on the sides and just put tape over it. Just tape them like that. It'll actually cool it. There's like, that's just wasted space in there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty cold in there.
Actually, Garrett, can you bring me? I left the bucket in the fucking gas. Can you bring that? Sure. Sure. Woohoo! Let's get stupid. God, I hope I did the math on this right.
To do this pour, we're using our Black Forest Deep resin as it can handle large volumes like this without the issues of overheating that I talked about. Now, even though our resin is high quality and it's designed to do these large pours, all of those things that I mentioned earlier about dissipating the heat and cooling the resin are still very, very important, even with the highest quality of resin. You don't have to use our deep resin to do a pour like this. You could use another brand of epoxy, but I would absolutely still recommend taking all of these steps for cooling. So we'll get that poured right up to the top, and fortunately we had no leaks on this mold. We just sealed everything up with silicone, and now we wait for 7 days to allow this to cure, and hopefully there's no bubbles when we're done.
Oh, is this the quality content? You fucking frozen water bottles into a bucket? This is what the people pay to see, isn't it? I want to see this in the video. This is high quality woodworking right here. There's resin in here.
Where?
I just got a handful of resin.
Well. Oh, it just dripped in when I poured it. It's okay.
Oh, okay.
It's just a little bit from pouring.
And now it's just like all watery. and
We're
shit.
safe. We're fine.
Anyways, here's
We're
some
fine.
boxes. Go get the handful of. Yeah,
These are all water.
this one's ice. And honestly, that's a lot of ice in there, so.
Yeah.
While we're waiting for that to cure, we can move on to constructing the top for this table. The outer section of this table is a tinted black, almost a frosted resin, and then you have this crystal clear window in the middle that's going to allow our customer to be able to see their painting. So in order to achieve this, we do our initial pour with that tinted black, and we purposely sectioned off the middle area where the painting is going to go so that we don't pour any resin in there. So that's going to leave us this like 3-inch thick rectangle with a big hole in the center. Again, we're using our Black Forest deep resin here because this is a really thick pour, so we need to make sure that that has lots of time to cure and the ability to dissipate that heat without us getting any bubbles, because this style of table is very unforgiving in that if you have even one speck of dust or any small imperfection in there, it is going to stick out like a sore thumb. Now here's something you don't usually see us doing, is mixing the resin after it's already been poured into the form. So we just wanted to go through and mix that up to make sure that the finished product is going to look absolutely crystal clear. Now, once this initial pour has been cured for 7 days, we can get it popped out of the form and begin preparing for the next pour. Essentially, what we need to do now is pour a clear window in the center of this table that's quite thin so that we can fit the painting beneath there without it touching any of the components of the table, because obviously with the value of this painting, it is quite important that we're not going to accidentally damage it.
Got that on video? I hope so. No, they got the sound effect too.
Oh, this thing. There's sometimes brain problems.
Ah, did it again.
Well, this is going to be very interesting. This is quite a project we've made here. This is for a clear, full solid resin base that we've made. I call it the Colosseum. It quite a unique mold and form that we had to create. I've had this concept, and then Ibrahim, our design genius, came up with the mold, and we're going to demold this today.
Here we go. I think we can.
What cheese? Christ. Save all this. You want to flip it right over?
Just like,
Okay.
and come over.
Yeah, flip it right over.
We'll actually hang this off.
Flip it right over.
No, look, just do this. Now pound the bottom off.
Yeah, but we can pound it up too.
I guess. It's just...
Don't let it fall. All right, let's set it over there or something.
Pass this to you. Let's go over and back.
Okay.
So I know that the deformation wasn't intentional, but look at the way it when you walk around it, it makes it look like everything's moving. Like one of those mirrors in a carnival or something. I don't mind that. Kind of looks cool. With a bit of...
Yeah. I'll have to get polished up.
49 this way, 292 that way. That's the up one, right? 1502.
So now that we've got that first tinted black pour cured and flattened, we can go over to the CNC machine to cut out the shape for the window that's going to house the painting, and then also cut the outside shape on this table since the client kind of wants this rounded rectangle or oval shape. When we're doing processes like this on our CNC machine that involve resin, it's very important for us that we have sharp cutters, we're doing small passes, and we're taking everything nice and slow. It's kind of high risk making cuts like this because epoxy is more brittle than wood and it can be prone to chip out or just removing big chunks that aren't expected. So I think it was like 7 or 8 passes that we went in terms of thickness to actually cut out that outside shape. And then after we do that, we also go over it with a straight bit that removes something like 0.5 millimeter just to clean up the edge on that cut. And now we can see the shape of this table starting to come together. So here's the top minus the window, and what we need to do now is square out our corners and sand everything nice and clean, because once we pour the layer for that window, it's going to be pretty hard for us to do much cleanup in there because of all the tight corners that we have. So this, again, is a very high stress pour with major consequences if there's any imperfections. We need to seal off all the edges where the painting is going to rest up against. So we're just using some of our Black Forest deep resin. And then we need to pour about a 1/2 inch thick window that's going to show off all the beauty of our client's artwork. And as you can imagine, if there's a speck of dust, if there's a bubble, if there's literally anything in this layer, our client is likely not going to accept this table and we're going to have to rebuild the entire thing. Fortunately, the pour went very, very well, minus a couple ripples that were on the top side here of the cured surface, which we weren't anticipating, and you're going to see how we deal with them later, but there was no foreign bodies that found themselves into the resin during the curing process. We did have a bit of a meniscus that formed on the top of the legs from the mold we created. It usually does that, just right up against the edge where it meets the mold, you get this sharp corner that forms. So to fix that, we just took the MDF surface out of our CNC machine, we built a flat surface on the ground, and then we're using that to surface off all of our high spots and just get this base perfectly flat and parallel with the floor.
I don't know, have you used this before? Because I know there's supposed to be like a Rotex mode where it takes off like more material, but I don't know. So basically,
I think that's big.
Yes.
So if you turn it on, right now it's not random orbital, but then you go like that, and then it's easier to control.
That's random orbit. The other one's Rotex.
Okay.
Rotex is just like a direct drive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I had a feeling. So thank you. It's gonna heavy though.
Yeah.
Like
imagine standing a table.
no, I would never.
And now the work of polishing and sanding this epoxy surface begins. Again, this is much less forgiving than working with wood. Wood, you typically only have to sand up to about 320 grit to get looking nice and pretty for a table, whereas with this epoxy, we're gonna have to go through all the sanding grits up to 4,000 grit and then go through multiple stages using automotive polishing compounds to be able to get all the sanding swirls out of that surface. The actual painting that's going in this table is bigger than the base itself, so we had to create some kind of platform that wouldn't be visible but would allow the painting to sit completely flat when it's placed in the table. So our solution for that was just a sheet of acrylic that's fixed into the base using some acrylic dowels. Again, our goal with this is to avoid using any fasteners, having any hardware, or any other material besides clear resin in the table, so that's why we went with the acrylic here. So we created this jig to drill out 2 holes in the top of this base that we could insert our clear polished acrylic dowels, and then we can drill out some holes into a sheet of acrylic that will fit perfectly over top of that to support the painting. Now, one neat little trick that works with acrylic that doesn't work with epoxy is flame polishing. So if you have any saw cut edges, you can just take your torch to them. It will melt down that surface and bring back perfect clarity to the piece. And we did keep the paper cover on this acrylic throughout the whole process just to make sure we didn't get any scratches or imperfections in that surface. So once we're ready at the very end, we can peel that off. So now that all of the components are fully constructed for this table and we have our surface that's going to support the painting, we can move on to our final stages of sanding and polishing. So like I mentioned earlier, we have to go up to 4,000 grit and then also use automotive polishing compounds. And you can see Jack here right now polishing the inside bottom surface of our window. And this is something that we didn't anticipate we were going to have to do. Our initial plan was just to go with the cured surface, but it wasn't quite perfect. So we did add that extra step just to get better clarity out of the piece. And then once we have our polishing completed, we can use our Black Forest ceramic coating to add an additional layer of protection to this table. Now you will notice on the underside that it looks a little matte and hazy while we're applying the ceramic coating, and that is by design because the client wanted this outer layer to have that frosted effect. So in order to do that, we went with a lower sanding grit on the bottom. I believe it was 1,000 grit, and then we applied the ceramic coating to that. And here is the contrasting top side of the table that went through all of the sanding grits and all of the polishing compounds, and you can see that it has a mirror-like finish after we put our ceramic coating on there. So not only is the ceramic coating going to help protect this piece from scratches, but it's going to make it hydrophobic, and it's also going to give some UV protection to help maintain the clarity in the epoxy. After all of our polishing is complete, we can get this table lifted downstairs to do our final test fit before we ship this off to our client in the Hamptons in New York. So carefully, we're going to peel off that protective cover. We're going to do one final flame polish on all of our edges for the acrylic to make sure everything looks absolutely perfect. And then we can start assembling the components for this table. Unfortunately, like I mentioned earlier in the video, the painting was actually too expensive for any shipping company to want to insure it. So we weren't able to do a test fitting with the painting. But our client did send us some videos of this table installed into the home, so you guys will get to see that in just a few moments here. To recap, we used our Black Forest deep resin to construct this. We used Color Effects black dyes to get a nice tinted finish in the resin. We polished everything up using automotive compounds, and then we protected the piece using our Black Forest ceramic coating. We'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this piece since it is quite different than the tables that we typically build. I know sometimes people don't like when we use so much resin, but I don't know, I think this is a pretty unique piece. And I also want to know what you think of the whole idea of having a piece of artwork in your coffee table as opposed to on the wall. Maybe this is something that's going to become popular. I don't know, but here's the video in our client's home so you can see that nice frosted finish. You can't see through the table, which is what they wanted, and a perfectly clear window showing off the piece of art. But thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and we will catch you guys next time.